My name is Alan Knapp, and I'm a professor of biology at Colorado State University. And I've been asked to provide my origin story, how I got involved in science, how I got interested in science, how I ended up here at Colorado State. So I'll go back to the beginning. I was born in Southern California, great place to grow up, at least when I was there. Had zero interest in science as a youth. Spent most of my time playing sports, thinking I was going to be a professional athlete someday. And so my interest in science really wasn't sparked until much later. I ended up in a very small high school, only 50 or so kids. And there, my interest in science was primarily in math and chemistry. And that was driven by the quality of the teachers. In a small school, oftentimes you have some pretty good teachers and some not so inspiring teachers. And it just so happened that the teachers that were the most inspiring were those that taught those two subjects. So I went off to undergraduate school at Idaho State University, a pretty small state school as well. And much like as a high school student, it was really the quality of the teaching there that brought me into science. I started off thinking that math and chemistry would be the path I would take. Lasted for a couple of years in those two areas, searched around. I think I had 4 or 5 majors as an undergraduate. And by the time I was about a 5th year undergrad, I realized I needed to focus on something, and a general biology degree was the way to go for me at that particular point in time. I did not have any interest in biology up until I started taking lots of courses to fulfill that degree requirement as an undergraduate. While taking those courses, I happened to take a plant ecology course taught by a very inspiring professor. He was one of these folks who was just excited about everything and a very positive individual. So it was easy to be attracted to his lab. Ended up working for him a bit, did an undergraduate research project with him, hung out with his grad students, and that really opened my eyes as to the other part of being in college, which is graduate school as opposed to undergraduate school. And so after I graduated, I first tried to get a job with my undergraduate degree in biology. No success at all there, really wasn't trained to do much of anything. So I really went to graduate school because there was not much else to do for me personally at that time. Ended up at the University of Wyoming, where I did a master's and was convinced that a master's would be my terminal degree. And so I did that master's degree focusing on ecophysiology of plants in the Rocky Mountains. From there, I received an offer for a position in Kansas at Kansas State University as essentially a research technician at a brand new field station, the Konza Prairie Research Natural Area, which was also part of the emerging long-term ecological research network. And really, while I was there, that really catalyzed my interest in science as a career. Even though I had a master's and was a technician, there were a large group of postdocs who were hired to begin that long-term ecological research program, and they took me under their wing and essentially treated me as if I was one of them. And so I had the opportunity to do research with these postdocs for almost 4 years before going back to do my PhD at the University of Wyoming, which was also focused pretty much on plant ecophysiology during those years there. And so because I did what many people have called a pre-doc as opposed to a postdoc, I'd spent now 9 years between my master's and PhD and my time at the Konza Prairie doing research. I didn't do a postdoc. Instead, I applied for a number of faculty positions and was ironically fortunate enough to land an assistant professorship at Kansas State University, where the Konza Prairie was and still is. And so I spent 16 years or so there on the faculty at Kansas State University, eventually rose up to be the principal investigator of the long-term ecological research program there. A great experience. Shifted my research primarily from plant ecophysiology in the mountains to grassland ecosystem ecology. And was really fortunate to be offered a position here at Colorado State in 2004, where I've been the senior ecologist ever since. I've been incredibly lucky to collaborate on a number of research projects over the years. I think collaboration in science is the most fun you can have doing science. Not that doing individual research isn't great, but doing large-scale collaborative research, I think, has greater impact, certainly has greater impact on me in the way I think. So I've been involved with large collaborative projects through the Long-Term Ecological Research Network, where we've looked at controls of interannual variability on productivity. For example, I've been involved in research syntheses of the role of large herbivores, bison, for example, the role they play in grasslands. Been involved in climate change synthesis work, where we've looked at and thought about how predicted increases in the intensification of the hydrological cycle, so increases in intense rainfall, in drought, those sorts of things, how that might affect systems ecologically, both wetlands, drylands, all systems in between, and those kind of big scale, big picture questions, really important issues. Publishing papers on those, I think, has been the most impactful. So my origin story is essentially one of not being interested in science while I was young, of sort of falling into science and falling into ecology based upon inspirational faculty members. And I've never really thought since then about doing anything else but being a scientist. And I just have to say again that, both at Kansas State University and here at Colorado State University, being at large land-grant universities where you have really great students, both undergraduates and grad students, has really just been a wonderful career to have. My research today is primarily focused on, I think, what most scientists are focused on in ecology, which is climate change, or at least global change more broadly. And I think those are the issues that drive us all right now in terms of how the systems that we think we understand are changing with these unprecedented global changes. And so specifically, I still work in grasslands. I've worked in grasslands now, despite my start in forests and in mountainous regions. I've worked in grasslands for most of my career. And they tend to be very susceptible, vulnerable, if you will, to the types of climate changes that are proposed. Grasslands are extremely sensitive to any change in precipitation. The grasslands tend to be on the edge in terms of having enough moisture to function properly. And so any change in the nature of precipitation, whether it's wetter years or drier years, or changes in rainfall event size, or changes in the distribution of rainfall, of the seasonality, all those sorts of things are likely to have big impacts on the basic way that grassland ecosystems function. And so most of my research now revolves around those broad questions about how are the basic drivers of ecosystem function that are currently being altered in a directional and in some sense unknown way in the future. How are they likely to change the basic functioning of those grassland ecosystems? And most of my students do my students, of course, do all the research in my lab, and they're all focused pretty much on those issues as well. And I think I'm done.